Welcome, thank you. Thanks for coming. My name's Tom Ourada. I'm from Spokane, Washington. I'm with Ourada Designs, and I'm here to talk about paper scribing, boards to butt up against natural edge flooring, or actually it could even work for the infinity curves. If you have a big wide plank, you need to butt up to something that is irregular, stone, anything that's like a header against a stone piece, you need to do a nice scribe up against there. This technique will help for that. This technique is based off of a few things I want to talk about. One, the tools are very important. The most important tool in this thing here is having a good pair of radio headphones, and then a radio to cover up the singing so other people don't have to listen to you sing really bad. So, and then we got this jigsaw. I got a sander, a knife, pencil, paper. Those are my key tools. That's pretty much all I need. I do use a skill saw for cutting straight. I don't cut straight very often. I like live edge. I always try to keep one side of my board live edge at least. But there are situations where I do need a skill saw, and that'd be for the perimeter. I usually do a picture frame perimeter around the room, and that's usually a wider board, and the board up against the wall requires a straight cut. So I use a skill saw versus bringing in a table saw for that. And then on the 45s, typically they're wider boards, so they don't fit in a miter saw. And so I cut it with a skill saw and miter them together that way. So specifically, the jigsaw is important for me because it cuts all the tight little angles as clean as I can get it. This is actually set up for a left-handed person in my book, because I'm right-handed. I'm always looking at the left-hand side of the blade, and when I'm cutting a board, I'm always cutting so the right side of the board is falling off. When I cut it, I want the board to have a taper on it, just a slight little half a degree taper, so that when I butt it up to another board, the tops will touch, not the bottoms. It's really a pain when you get a nice, perfect cut and you butt it up and the bottom's all touching and it's still got an 1/8 inch gap on the top. So I've learned to 99% of my cuts are with my jigsaw that has a taper on it, and it's always going this way. So I'll flip a board around to cut it so I'm cutting it the right way. Jigsaw blades need to be sharp, otherwise it chips up, it flips off your line so you can't see the line. The big key of this process is being accurate. A sharp knife, one that you can open up with one hand. A lot of times my other hand is being used to hold down the paper. Paper. So we've got all sorts of different types of paper. I've used brown paper bags, wrapping paper. Also, so you can use thick or thin, and there's a window that you can use. Thick is really good because it holds itself flat, but it's really hard to cut. Thin is really good because it's easy to cut, but it doesn't hold the shape very well. So you kind of push off the thick and thinner ones and go somewhere in between. It doesn't have to be anything specific. I use printer paper. That's probably the thinnest I go. And then I move to the thickest I go is that red craft paper you might get at Home Depot. That's thick, and it gets a little tougher to cut. And again, the harder it is to cut, the harder it is to get an accurate description of what the edge is going to look like. I also have sandpaper so that when I make marks and make more marks and make more marks, and then it gets confusing, I just sand them off. And the smoother your board is, the more accurate your line is, clean cut line. So then what I want to do is first do a real quick show of the process. Then I want to talk about the lines, because the lines are the real important part of this. So if this is my board, say it's up against a wall, it's screwed down. Oh, that's another part of my tools is screws. Once I get a board established where I want it, I screw it down so that it's not moving. So then when I put another board up to it, it doesn't move a little bit in the gaps. I don't like filler, so I try to make everything as tight as possible so that any movement limits that. So I screw it down. I take another board and I orient it on where I want it. All right. And so now there's four points marks I make. I make a mark on either side, and then I make a mark perpendicular directly above the board underneath. And so what that does is I can remove the board at any time, and then I can always put it back and it's going to be right exactly where it needs to be. Also, it tells me where my paper is going to need to be laid. So I've taken my paper and my knife, and I position my paper on one of the marks that I've made. And since the paper's opaque, I can't see where I'm cutting. So it's real important that I give some sort of guideline so I can get a nice, clean, accurate cut. Sometimes there's knots, sometimes there's dents, sometimes there's whatever you don't know. Void, there's just openness, so you just veer off and then you got a bad cut. So you hold it down, dirty up your finger, and just rub the edge. And it creases it a little bit, plus puts a little dirt on there, gives you a little guideline. So a quick cut. And if you don't have a sharp knife, it tears the paper, and it, see right there, I just went off a little bit. Kind of going fast. And then I really tore the paper. But it doesn't matter because the other mark is right there. So I make a mark. I know that it started here and ended here. So I come to the other mark that was there. Okay, and then I put it here. So I just line it back up on those two other marks. So this paper represents this board. Everything on this side is the board I want to keep. A quick scribble right up to and this is the other thing about thicker paper, and you can use the paper as the guide. The thinner the paper, the more likely you are to actually dent the paper or go under the paper. So you keep it firmly pushed down onto the board. Okay, so now I know that this pencil line is the line I want to go to. So there's some gaps there, and I would do some fine tuning, but that's not where I'm at right now. So the next one I would put here, same thing, mark on each side, mark perpendicular above, and knife. Give you guidelines, cut, and this is my piece I want, and I go between those 2 points I marked on there, and again. Now this is a piece that gets dropped, so then I would cut that off and it fit there. Okay, so these two pieces were cut differently. You probably didn't see it because it's a small little line. So I wanted to show you on a bigger piece of paper the two different types of lines. There's a drop line and a keep line. So pretend this is thick, like a board. This isn't just another piece of paper. This is the board. So I make my marks. Give myself a guideline. Cut my board. Oh, I'm doing it wrong. No, this is my board. Then you get the template paper, not your board, because you can't cut a board with a knife. Okay, so here's my template. And there's my board. Okay, so two types of lines. So this template here is the piece that is on the floor that's staying. So everything on this side of this template is the drop part. Because we don't want any of this because we've already got this. Everything that came over here on this template is the keep template. So everything under here is kept. So everything under this board is kept because it's not this. I hope that makes sense. So I position my template on the 2 marks I drew, and then I make a big mark. Okay, so this represents the board I want to keep. The black side on this side, I don't want it. And so I put a D for drop. So this side of the line and everything on that side is going to be dropped off. We don't want any of it. Yeah, we do. We want a little bit. Because when I create these logs, I have all these logs. They're all special. They came from one log. They don't have any other matches. I can't go to Home Depot and buy some. Can't go to a local wholesaler. So I can't risk screwing them up. I can't risk shortening them up. So when I cut this line, I want to leave just a smidgen of the line left, because this line and everything on this side of it, I don't want. But if I leave just a little bit of the line, there'll be just a little bit extra of the board I need. If I go across the line, then I'm cutting into the board that I need. So I'm always just leaving that little bit of line, plus the jigsaw. It seems like whenever I'm cutting a line and I move off of that line or go into the board, I keep going further. It's like gravity. It just pulls me in. So I've learned to keep that just a little smidgen of a line there, so so the board will always be long. It's my cushion. So this is like the represented. This represents a jigsaw blade. Oh, that's that. So if I had a jigsaw blade, a big one like that, it's got a slight angle to it. So I turn this over because I want the slight angle going that way. So I'd cut it right along that line, and I'd leave a little bit of that line left. So the drop line gets a little bit of the line left, and it comes off. So in theory, since you see a little bit of the black line left on there, this board is just a little bit long. So the learning curve of this is trying to get that little bit of black line as small as possible, so you don't have as much to have to clean off. So this butts up real nice. It's not as nice as I'd want it, well, it's a piece of paper, but I end up going back to a sander, and I sand off all the high points that are keeping it from butting up real close. So that was the keep. The drop one, let's see here, let's do the drop one with this one. Same thing. Oh. See, now I'm getting all these lines on here, so this is where I'd be, actually I wouldn't do it here, but it's the same idea. I get too many lines on there, it gets confusing, so I sand them off. Make marks. Get my paper. Make sure I got the right marks. Find some dirt. Make a crease. I get a little guideline. Cut my template. Okay, that's the keep. This is the drop. So now, in this situation, my marker. This line is now the keep line. And I come to do the K's and the D's, the drops and the keeps, because I can do a couple different boards at one time, and then I pick them up to go cut them somewhere else, and I forget. I forget which side of the line I was supposed to cut on. And actually, I'm being generous with myself. Usually I just pick up one board and walk into the other room, and I forget which line it is. So the K's and D's help me a lot, and it does help for multiple boards. So without even, I can come back a week later and know which side of the line to cut. I know that the keep side, everything from this line over is kept, so now I'm going to cut just the wood, the raw wood. I'm not even going to touch the line. And this time I'm going to leave just a little bit of wood. I'm not even going to cut into that line at all. And that's my cushion. If I cut right up close to the line and not cut the line, then I know I'm going to be a little bit long. And that's going to save me from cutting my board too short and losing it. Or putting in a lot of filler, and I'm not a big fan of the filler. It happens, and I do put filler in, but I'd rather not. I'd rather have it nice and clean. And so again, this fits pretty good, and that might be good enough. You know, it depends on how critical you are, where it's going to be, and it's your own home. Fill it up. Otherwise, if there's high points, I will find high points, and I will go on either side of them. So these are the marks I usually are erasing because. So at this point, there's one high point. So I come here and I take my sander and I sand off that high point. Oh, now it's closer. Oh, now there's two high points over here. So I mark on either side of that high point, and then I sand off those high points. Oh, now it's a big area that's still just a little high. So now I've got 3 sets of marks here that I'm kind of getting confused on. And honestly, I've done probably up to 8 different cutting off high marks. So I kind of look at this as like a conversation. It's a communication between this line, or this edge of the board, and another edge of the board. And I'm the translator. And I don't remember that game, that telephone game you played as a kid. You'd whisper to somebody and then go around the circle. By the time it gets back to you, that's not what I said. Of course not. That's kind of how this is. So it's really important to keep the information as accurate as possible each time.